Talk about the agenda a little bit. We're just going to touch on UL 2050 and what that is, a little bit about how Bosch intrusion is affected by GSA. We'll talk about intrusion detection systems, IDS, in this part of the world, in this part of the business. IDS is a big deal, so I don't get to say IDS much, so I'm going to say it a lot today. We'll talk about communication and how Bosch encrypts our communication. We have a new product that's about to release in the first quarter, which is a new central station receiver based upon software. We're going to talk about that. Here's a question. Does anybody know of any products that are UL 2050 listed? This is a question that comes up to me often. I get a call, are your products 2050 listed? Anybody know? There are no products that are 2050 listed. Everybody calls, hey, they say their product's 2050 listed. 2050, UL 2050 is an installation standard. It's not a product standard. So when you say, hey, is your product 2050 listed, it's kind of the wrong way to say it. We have products that can be used in a 2050 application. And 2050 is the UL standard. This is the official statement, so I'm going to read it. I don't read my slides much, but I'm going to read this one. UL 2050 is UL standard for construction and management of sensitive, compartmented information facilities, or SCIFs. That's a SCIF there. I stole that picture off the internet, but that's a SCIF. So we can only have conversations about this information. We can only hold this information because it's highly classified in a secure facility. And UL 2050 covers a lot more than just the intrusion detection system. It covers how that location is constructed, which types of equipment you use in there, how you're going to store that material, who is going to do the installation and how are they going to do it and how are they going to monitor it. So UL 2050 is really a large standard that covers the installation and management of the security within a SCIF. The good news for you is all Bosch alarm panels can be used in a 2050 application. And what does it take to make your alarm system work in a 2050 application? Really, you need to have a UL commercial listed product, and there's a new UL standard, UL 2610, that covers all these old standards. So we all used to know about 639 and 1076. There's a central station standard in there, and there's a proprietary standard in there. Well, you all got smart and they said, hey, let's not maintain all these different standards. Let's put it under one, and we're going to call that 2610. And as manufacturers, we're slowly transitioning to that 2610. So our control panels today, when they were released, they met these other standards. So our panels have not been tested to 2610 because they meet the old standards. But when we come out with new products, they will meet 2610 because the old standards aren't applicable for new products. So you have to have a product that is commercially listed. Motion detectors, and it's funny, if you read through the requirements of UL 2050, it doesn't even really say that about the intrusion panel. The brains, the thing that run on this whole thing, you read through there and it's like, it really doesn't say anything about UL. But, dude, put a UL listed panel in there. But they do say UL listed commercial motion detectors that they need to meet. I think it's 639, the requirement for motion detectors. So you need to have a UL listed commercial product to put it in a SCIF. Okay? Any communication that leaves the SCIF needs to meet a NIST standard of encryption. So I'm sending information. Somebody breaks into the SCIF. I'd like somebody to come take care of that. So I need to communicate out of the SCIF that this has happened. We have an alarm. Well, I'd like somebody to come. We're going to communicate to the mega center. We're going to communicate to some other monitoring center, some UL listed 2050 company who's monitoring the system. That communication has to be encrypted. All Bosch panels, frankly, all Bosch IP devices, this little Congress system here, our cameras, everything that says Bosch and has IP plugged into it, supports encryption, and our alarm panels support the highest level of encryption in the alarm industry, and they meet in the standards. So really, all you really got to do to have a product that can be used in a 2050 application is make sure that it has a commercial UL listing and any communication is encrypted. So the good news is all Bosch intrusion panels meet that requirement. Then we get into, and this is not actually a requirement, but most people think it is, where's the product made? And the bottom line here, there's a lot of rules and regulations, and since I have a very bright light shining in my face, I can't tell if Jenny Judah's in the room. Is Jenny here? No. Okay. We have an expert that understands the FARs, which are the Federal Acquisition Requirements, for different systems and different buildings and different facilities within government agencies. She can tell you all about this. But when it comes right down to it, the bottom line is the product on the GSA schedule? And does it meet the requirements of GSA? And most of that is it built in a friendly country? There's the Trade Agreement Act, which includes a list of countries that are friendly to the United States, and it's okay that if you build your product there, you can use it in a government facility. Not all applications require made in America. There's different requirements for that, but the basis is, does it meet TAA? Is it in a friendly country? And this is a list of the requirements for those countries that are part of TAA. They're a World Trade Organization, they're free trade agreement countries, and the Caribbean Basin countries. So we make all of our products not all of our products, the majority of our products are made either in Mexico or in Portugal, and those products meet TAA, and they can be used in government facilities. The good news is, a quick way to know which product can be used is look at the GSA schedule and look for Bosch, and you'll find a long list of products that are on the GSA schedule and can be used in a government facility as part of a government contract. You're good to go. All intrusion panels are now built in either Mexico or Portugal and meet the TAA requirements and are on the GSA schedule. So, intrusion detection system. So that's basically that. Speaking about all intrusion panels from Bosch, this is a list of all of our intrusion panels and their capacities and some of their features. We're going to talk a little bit more about some applications, especially for government. But Bosch has a long list of intrusion panels. Most people are familiar with our G-Series panels, our 8512G and our 9512G. I'm going to ask you to raise your hand, but I won't see most of you. Anybody know the name Radionics, the brand name Radionics from years ago? It's not a dirty word around here. We like to bring that up because it's a good heritage. These are the panels that are the latest in the generation from that heritage of Radionics. And they have much newer technology than those things we were shipping 40 years ago. But if you look at them, man, they look the same. But you open up the hood and you realize they're pretty different. The panels to the left of this chart, the 35, 45, 55, and 6512, are those G-Series little brothers. So they're meant for a smaller application. They're not addressable. They're not fire. But they, again, made in a TAA-approved country, have the highest level of encryption that is required. They can be used in a government building. You don't need to move to the G-Series panel, which means that if you've got a SCIF as big as this stage, and you got a couple motion detectors and a couple of door contacts, you could use one of our smaller panels and save that customer hundreds of dollars. I'm very happy if you put in our most expensive panel, and so is the salesman who sold it and gets the commission. But quite frankly, you don't have to get our most expensive panel to get the highest level of encryption to get that capability. You could use one of our smaller panels as well, just so you know. That's what the B series looks like. There's some signatures here to a Bosch panel. One of those signatures, I like to talk about it a lot, is the circuit board is covered. There's a plastic cover over the circuit board. Why do we do such a thing? There's a lot of little things we do as Bosch in all of our products to make the installation easier, faster, and more accurate. One of those things is a covered circuit board. And that does a couple things. It protects the product. So if I slip with a screwdriver, I'm not going to knock the capacitor off of there or the resistor off of there or short something out. But it also is a very convenient place to mark the terminals. So it's very clear where I have to wire this thing. You don't need a manual to wire a Bosch panel because the terminals are marked. That sounds like an obvious thing, but not all of our competitors do that. One of our biggest competitors in the market, they number their terminals. What's terminal number 17? I don't know. I got to break out the manual or the wiring diagram, right? With a Bosch panel, you want to know where you hook up the keypad, you hook it up here. You want to know where you hook up the points, you hook it up here, and hey, power goes down there. So it just makes it easier. And if it's easier to be fast and it's easier to be accurate. And that's the important thing. You don't want to have to go back because somebody miswired something because they thought it was 27, but it was really 28. So that's kind of neat. The other thing that's a signature of Bosch panels, all Bosch panels come with Ethernet on board now. We don't even ship them with a telephone dialer anymore. We have a plug-in slot for communications, and we'll talk about that in a bit. All Bosch panels come with a onboard Ethernet connector, which again has encrypted communication. All Bosch panels come with this little USB port for local programming. So you can plug your laptop into it and program it on site without affecting the network or any of that crazy stuff. So it's just some signatures of a Bosch panel. This is the G series panel. You're probably more familiar with this one. This has that radionics look. Boy, that looks like a radionics panel. It kind of is, but it's the latest generation. We haven't been radionics in 20 years. I was here when we bought them. I'm glad we did. But this is the G series panel, and again, you've got your Ethernet port, your USB port, the plug-in slots. Again, there's a lot of information on this front plate, so you can see where to wire things and information about UL. All of that stuff is here. These things are important. It's just little things we do to make it easier to install and protect the product. We have a family of keypads that are available. You can pick from our text keypads to fire keypads. We have touchscreen keypads, all that kind of stuff. One of the most unique features of the Bosch panel, we're going to talk about some features and some applications now. Bosch makes IP-based alarm panels. We make IP-based cameras. And our Bosch cameras can integrate with our alarm panels. And basically the way it works is our cameras have very intelligent analytics at the edge. So they can detect a lot of different things, objects moving, something's inside a field, something's exited a field, something's crossed a barrier or a trip line, line crossing, loitering, all these kinds of things. And they can put classifications or filters on these things. Is it a big thing or is it a little thing? Is it a truck? Is it a person? Is it an orange truck? Is it going in this direction? All those kinds of things, the camera can make that decision, which is great if you happen to be looking at the VMS system and that alarm pops up. The beauty here is that it can also report into the alarm panel, which now can send a message to the monitoring center, can send a text, can make noise at a keypad, can do all the things you do when an event happens. So that camera detects an event, and it triggers the alarm panel. Well, somebody's loitering by the back door. I don't want them to loiter by the back door. So I'm going to make a little noise at my keypad, and hopefully somebody hears that, loitering by the back door, and they walk back and they scare the person away. Or it makes an announcement. Hey, you loitering by the back door. Not you guys, you can stay by the back door. You loitering by the back door, please leave immediately. You're in a secure area. Or we can send a report, we can send a text. All those kinds of things that an alarm panel does, that's its job, to report things. I like to say that an alarm system's job is something bad is happening in my building and I'd like somebody to help. That's its job, right? So its job is to help detect things and report them so that somebody comes and reacts to them. That's all an alarm system's job. Well, that thing doesn't have to be a burglar. It can be other things as well. It can be vehicles. Somebody's parked in the fire lane and I'd like them to move their car. All that kind of stuff. It reports bad things that have happened in your facility. Here's a real-world application for you. And this was the first use of integrated intrusion alarm and camera analytics that I can recall are blocked emergency exits. Now, we're mostly government customers here, but if you read back in the trade journals and it actually made the national news, there's a very large retailer with dollar in their name that paid a very large fine recently because of unsafe conditions in their stores, aisles that were blocked, emergency exits that were blocked. And they had to pay a pretty large fine because of this, because they were creating an unsafe situation for their customers. Well, a camera can detect an object left behind or an object in an area, in a field. And it can detect that somebody has put a pallet of boxes in front of your fire exit. Now it's no longer a fire exit because nobody can use it, and signal the alarm panel. Now somebody can react to that, move the offending pallet of boxes, and then you don't get the big old fine that comes up in the news, and Tom Meckler tells everybody about it. The other thing we can do is, it's kind of neat. I don't know if anybody caught on the other slide, our cameras can actually process up to 16 analytics, but they can send 8 analytics to the panel, which means one camera can do more than one thing. And in this case, the camera's looking down a fence line. And I like to call this application approach and breach. Why do you have a fence? Why do you put a fence up? Keep people out. You have a fence to keep the bad people out. So if somebody's approaching your fence, wouldn't you like to scare them away? So the camera can actually be looking down the fence line, watching the area outside the fence, and if it sees a person approaching the fence, activate an alert. Activate a point on the panel that plays a message on one of our fine EV or Bosch speakers that says, you're approaching a secure area, please leave immediately. Same camera looking down the fence line, now bad guy jumps the fence. They've breached the perimeter. Now they're in where I don't want them. I tried to scare them away, it didn't work. Now they're here. We activate a separate alarm. Now we're in alarm because they've breached the perimeter. They're in here. Release the hounds, call the guards, do whatever you need to do because we're going to react to this. And it's one camera doing 2 things. The camera can actually do up to 10 things, 8 analytics, plus the dry contact inputs on the camera. So we can really do a lot with this. So if you think about this, if you leave with one thing about camera integration is anything the camera can detect, the alarm panel can report. So this car should not be parked by the back door of this building in this alley. The camera can detect a vehicle is parked in this area, they've been here for X, and we're going to create an alarm. What do you think this guy's doing? Right? He's about to spray the camera with some spray paint so he can come back later. The camera knows whether it has video or not. It can say loss of video. That can be reported as a tamper by the alarm system. If he did this and you weren't monitoring that, you wouldn't know until you were looking for the video that you had no video. In this case, what happens is he spray paints the camera sees I lost my video, reports a trouble to the alarm panel, which reports, again, something bad has happened. I'd like somebody to come help. Something bad in this case is somebody has tampered with my camera, or somebody has cut the wire, or somebody has pointed it in the wrong direction, or somebody has put a box over it. All those things the camera knows if it's been tampered with, and it can tell you, and the alarm panel can report it. So that's really the bottom line there. Some other features that we have in Bosch panels. This is a Bosch, unique to Bosch feature. Anybody familiar with access control systems and the prop door feature? I heard something over here, thank you very much. So an access control system, the doors are supposed to be closed. They'll have mechanical closers on them. They'll have locks. And most of the time the doors are supposed to be closed. You have access control, so I swipe my card or whatever. I go through the door. when I'm supposed to, when you know it's okay, I have a valid access, and we ignore the doors. And one of the features is if somebody props a door open with a brick or a stick or whatever, the access control system can tell you there's been a door propped, because now your perimeter is insecure. I'm a little insecure, but you know, it's different. You're unsecure, that's the word I was looking for. Your perimeter is unsecure because somebody can just walk in through an open door because there's a stick in the door, right? And the access control system can monitor it. What if you don't have an access control system? Our alarm systems can do that with any of the doors that are connected to the alarm system. So you have a door contact on this door because it's part of the burglar alarm system. Somebody breaks in, I want an alarm. Use that same contact and monitor if the door's been left open during the day. When you think about this, it's great that an alarm system detects someone breaking in when the system's armed and nobody's supposed to be there. But man, I want to be secured when my kids or my family or my employees or my customers are inside my building. That's really when I want security, and this can do that for you. So it takes a system that's normally only thought of when the building's supposed to be empty, and now it adds security to during the day as well. Any door in any Bosch panel can be monitored for door propped. You don't have to have access control. It's just part of the burglar alarm system. That's a big deal. Controlling traffic flow. We can arm and disarm different areas independently, and we can do this in a way that's more flexible than most of our competitors. We have up to 32 areas that can be individually armed or disarmed based upon the authority of the user, the person walking up to the keypad. So if I have access to the green area and the dark blue area, but I don't have access to the red area, it won't let me in. It won't let me even see it. If I'm a manager of this building and I have access every place, I can go to one keypad, disarm, and all those areas disarm, and I'm really happy. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, one of those areas is the ammunitions vault. Well, I don't want the ammunitions vault to disarm when I'm standing at the other end of the building. I only want it to disarm when I'm standing there and I'm accessing the keypad outside of it. Well, the system can be set up that way as well. So in a Bosch system, we can have up to 32 areas, and those areas can be individually controlled, and you can arm all areas from one keypad. Each area can have its own keypad, up to 32. I don't think anybody else can do that, by the way. I'm quite sure nobody else can do that. Or you can have anything in between. So these areas I can arm from one keypad, all 8 of those, but the ammunition vault is on its own. And that's really the value of a Bosch system, is the flexibility. What is something bad that has happened in my building that I might want to activate a report that isn't necessarily a burglar? Server racks. Somebody leaves the server rack open. Somebody opens a server rack. We can actually control access to that server rack. It's part of the alarm system. We have access control built in the alarm system. You can use that or not. And again, if the door to the server rack has been left open too long, we can activate an alert. Because they're done doing they're going to work on the server rack. You put a contact on that door. It typically takes them a half an hour. We set it for 45 minutes. And if that door's been open for 45 minutes, either there's really something really wrong with the server, or they forgot. They probably forgot. So we'd like them to go close that up. So we'll activate a local alert and they can go do that. Ensuring sensitivity for sensitive areas. I just show this as an example. It's still that same thing during the times when it's disarmed. I forget what's in there, but I think it's something explosive. I don't want the door open to the vault where there's something explosive. I don't know about you, but I'd like to know that that door's been left open. We can do that. There's all kinds of things like this. From a high security application, our systems can allow a requirement of 2 people to disarm an area. So if there's a highly secure application and I need 4 eyes, I need 2 people there, we can require that. We have a feature in our systems called Remote Connect. What that allows us to do is use our cloud service to allow connectivity to the panel. If you want to make a change to the panel, you want to change the way something works, you want to arm or disarm, or you want to use our app, you got to be able to get in and connect to that. And what we use is a feature called Remote Connect, which uses our cloud. We don't hold any of your data. It's just a connectivity path. We use our cloud for that connectivity, which means that it's a secure connection, which means that it's encrypted. So we have a secure connection for those outside, for that outside access for remote programming and those sorts of things. Another feature, all of our panels support up to 12 different languages. You can have 2 languages at once. The advantage here is the person who's operating your system isn't necessarily an English speaker. So that's fine when everything's cool and they arm the system and it arms and they leave and everything's all right. But if they arm the system and it won't arm because the door to the warehouse is open and it says door to the warehouse is open, but they're really not a good English speaker, so they really don't know what to do. Imagine if I'm an English speaker, you can decide whether I'm a good English speaker or not. But I go up to the door, or I go up to the keypad, I arm it, and in beautiful Hungarian, it tells me that the warehouse door is open. I have no idea what to do, because I can't read Hungarian. But when I press the button to say, show me that in English, and it says the warehouse door is open, I'll go close the warehouse door and your facility will be secure. That's why different languages are important in the system, and we can support up to 2 languages at once, and we can pick from all 12 of these languages. And people say, well, why would you do such a thing? Well, that's exactly why you would do such a thing. Plug-in communication modules, we're moving away from PSTN or phone line or POTS. There just aren't really any POTS systems anymore. Don't put a new system on a phone line. They're just not reliable, and they're just not going to be here much longer. Although we do support it, and we're down to just under 1/3 of our systems are sold with POTS modules today. I don't know where the heck these things are going, but we're selling them. But most systems are going with IP or they're going with cellular. And the way that we handle cellular is with a plug-in module. So you you plug in the module into the control panel. If the network changes, so we've gone from 2G to 3G to 4G. We're at 4G LTE these days. So if you have a 3G module that no longer works, so you probably should have replaced it before. But let's say you had a 3G module and you want to upgrade that to 4G. You pull out the old module, you update the firmware and whatever it's plugged into, you plug the new module in. Someday, we think around 2030 or 2031, 4G LTE is going to go away, and guess what? We'll have a new module that works on that new network, whatever it is. We don't even know what it is yet, but we know that we've built the hooks and the tools to be able to modify our system to work with whatever changes the cell companies decide they want to do. Onboard Ethernet, we talked about that. Another important thing about Bosch onboard Ethernet, a couple things. We support IPv6. So that's another level of security and capability that most of our competitors do not support. We have 4 different route groups, and that becomes important when you have backup, or maybe you are doing service, the monitoring center is handling all the alerts, but you wish you had some reports, you knew when there was a low battery or trouble with that system inside your shop, so you have a separate receiver. So we have 4 different routing groups with backup, very, very secure communication. I want to talk about encryption for a second, because I mentioned, especially for a SCIF, encryption is very important. Bosch, and I also said, if you recall, Bosch has the highest level of encryption in the intrusion industry, okay? There's different types of encryption that are out there, and if you look this up and you do some research on us and our competitors, and you go to the NIST encryption site, it'll tell you what type of encryption that they're using. And one of our competitors is using what's called electronic codebook, or ECB, encryption. What that means is that there's a list of encryption codes. So if you're trying to decrypt the message, you use one of these codes, one of these keys. And you can see that this message is the same every single time. So if you were trying to hack this and trying to figure it out, and you were really smart, you'd see the message is the same every single time, and eventually you'd be able to hack this and figure it out because it just uses a key. You know, it's like the little code watch that the kid got on Christmas Story, right? Drink your Ovaltine. Come on, give me a break. But until he got the watch, he didn't know he was supposed to drink his Ovaltine, which he was drinking anyhow. Anyhow, he could have figured it out without the watch had he had a few different signals. What we use is what's called CBC, or Cypher Block Chaining Encryption. Long story short, it's a rolling code. So with a message, we send a little bit of the code for the next message. With the next message, we send a little bit of the code for the next message. It's never the same twice, virtually impossible to hack. And if you go out and if you care about encryption, some of you customers do, most of the time, and I can't see if you're doing it, but most of the time when I talk about encryption, I see the eyes rolling to the back of their head and they're looking at their watch and he's talking about encryption. And I'm like, isn't it lunchtime? You know, that kind of stuff. But for your customers, it's important. And if encryption is important, good encryption is important. And Bosch uses Cypher Block Chaining, which is CBC, which is a higher level of encryption. The other guys, that is accepted by the government agencies. It just isn't as good. So you want to use a good level of encryption. And again, as I said earlier, you don't have to buy our most expensive panel and pay more for it to get encryption. Encryption is included in all of our panels. We have a new central station receiver coming out. We have an example of it over on the Tinker table, over in the demonstration area. Again, for those of you who are not familiar, the central station receiver, remember I said an alarm system's job is something bad has happened, I'd like somebody to come help. And the way it calls for help is to communicate with a central station receiver that's manned, somebody's there monitoring that, and some event has occurred, and that person decides, okay, we got to call the police, we got to call the guards, oh, we got to call Joe because they lost power again, all those kinds of things. That's how it works. So the central station receiver is in the central station, in the monitoring center, processing information from the alarm panels. We have a new version of that that's coming out in the spring. Actually, it'll still be winter, coming out in February. The B6800, that it's IP only. It'll handle up to 10,500 accounts. Your customer will put it on their own hardware. Up until now, you'd have to buy hardware from Bosch, but we're no longer going to do that. We'll have software that runs on your server or your customer's server. It has a browser UI. If you're familiar with our receivers today, in order to make changes to that receiver, you have to load software on every computer you want to make those changes from. That all goes away. There's only one place to load the software in the new world, and that's on a virtual machine inside the server. And all operators of that receiver will browse to it because it has a web server. Again, no PSTN. We're not going to build another PSTN receiver. We thought a lot about it. We said, nope, we're out of the PSTN receiver business. Sorry for those people that just can't give up their rotary dial phones. It just ain't going to work. But it's a new receiver solution, runs on your software. It uses Hyper-V. Too many details to go through here because I want to show you some of the slides. This is basically how it works. There's three parts. There's the receiver itself. That's the software that's running on that server, and it's the traffic cop. So it's taking the signals in and it's sending the information off to automation so that people can respond to those events. It's monitoring all those devices. So if you have a panel that's communicating over IP or cellular, it's checking in on a regular basis, anywhere from a few seconds to hours and hours, just to make sure that the communication path is still good. So the receiver's handling all of that. It's the traffic cop, it's taking information, it's making sure everybody's okay. Then we have the system manager, and the system manager is the tool that you'll use when you're making changes to the receiver. You're adding an account, you're deleting an account, those kinds of things. And that's accessible via a browser because it uses a web server to provide that. And the monitoring dashboard, which is my favorite part, which is like the front of the receiver, that gives you all the information. I got some slides that'll show this. I really like to talk about communication security when I talk about our receivers because it's important. And This is true for all BOSH panels. It's not new to the receiver. We've been doing it this way for a long time, but we sometimes forget to talk about it. And we have some specific security measures within our communication methods that really make for a more secure application. Number one is all accounts must be preloaded, which means that if I have an alarm panel and I want to communicate to that receiver, somebody has to go to the receiver and say, hey, start receiving messages from this alarm panel. The reason we do that is to help avoid denial of service attacks. So the receiver is only looking for communication from devices it is expecting to hear from. And if it hears from a device it's not expecting to hear from, it just ignores it. Just like my wife. She's not expecting to hear from me. I hear nothing. So that helps us with that. The other thing it does is it helps you deal with a runaway account. So if you have an alarm panel, and with IP these days, you have a door that's going in and out of alarm, you can send thousands of messages a minute, right? Because everything's quick. That's great. But everything's quick. So it sends you thousands of messages. And oh my God, it's running the central station ragging, and they want to shut it off. With our competitors, you have to call the IT guy and say, hey, go disconnect that IP address that's calling in, because we got to disable it. With our solution, you go to the software and you say, shut this account off until we fix it, then turn it back on. And if you talk to some of these, I know I talked with some of you this week that you're using some of our partners, Rapid Response, for example. They said, whatever you do with the new receiver, don't take this away, because we use it all the time. UDP communication also helps with denial of service attack. What denial of service attack, what that is if I know the IP address of your receiver, I can set up a bot and send messages to it. And I can set up another bot and send messages to it. And I can do that hundreds or thousands of times till your receiver is like, oh my God, I'm dealing with this bot, and it misses the actual alarm when I empty the vault. We thwart that because we use a secure level of communication. Every message is verified, and those bots, we're not expecting to hear from them, so we just ignore them. It's not like we're dealing with it, we just ignore it. It's like it didn't even happen. Anti-substitution and anti-replay. My favorite example of this, and I had enough time to tell the story, so I'm going to tell it. Remember the movie Speed? So Sandra Bullock's driving the bus, and Dennis Hopper's the bad guy. And Dennis Hopper has a camera in the bus, so he can see what's happening in the bus, because he's got a bomb in the bus as well. And if they do anything funny, I'm blowing up the bus. So he's got a camera in the bus, and he's watching all the people. And the cops realize they can make a recording of the video and substitute that recording and play it to Dennis Hopper. So while he thinks everything's fat, dumb, and happy, they're emptying the bus so he doesn't blow it up. It works for a while, but it wouldn't be a good movie if it worked forever. So that's substitution and replay. They take the signal out of the camera, they record it, they substitute it and replay it to him so he sees something that looks cool so he doesn't blow up the bus. Well, they're getting everybody out except for Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves. Weird name. Anyhow, in an alarm system, if I know the IP address of your receiver and the IP address of the panel, I can program a panel to look just like yours, then quick, unplug the Ethernet cable, plug it into mine, and my panel's not doing anything. It's just reporting to the monitoring center, everything's cool, and I go empty the vault. Our receiver is expecting to hear not only from a specific account, but from a specific device, so it knows that alarm panel is different. It will detect a substitution error and tell you, so you blow up the bus. This gives you a general idea of the monitor page of our new receiver. There's your real-time access. How many accounts do I have reporting to this receiver? How many are online? How many are offline? Which ones are offline? Am I communicating with automation? It really just is a really cool tool that gives you a lot of information about your situation with the receiver. And the system manager, this is where I add and delete my new accounts. This really means something to you if you've used our older receivers and you've added and deleted accounts, how simple this is. And we can go over all of this at the Tinker table because I am running. Oh, this tells you you have licenses to add to the system. So this tells you how many licenses you have left. So this particular one, they have 3,080 remaining accounts, so they know they're good. If you get down to 10 accounts, you probably need to buy a new license, that kind of stuff. I also want to take one of my 2 minutes left to thank the Mid-Chest team. They really do a great job with this event. They do a really great job supporting Bosch. So thank you to Matt and the entire team at Mid-Chest for all you do for us and for your customers. Thank you very much.
Bosch, invented for life.